Hi everyone, welcome to lesson 3 of the essay. Okay, we're working on the second essay of South African history. You will remember that in lesson 2, we left F.W. de Klerk having been elected as the president or appointed as the president of South Africa, and he actually set on the route towards making changes. And the last issues we talked about was the fact that he repealed the Separate Amenities Act, and the liberation movements were indeed rejoicing. But at that time where they were rejoicing, the AWB leader Terry Blanche threatened for a white backlash, and we've explained those complicated terms there, backlash and we've already explained the separate amenities in the previous lesson. Otherwise, the lesson for today, the heading says, the release of Nelson Mandela and the resumption of talks. Let me mention, students, also a very important point. Whenever you're working on an essay, you actually need to sift, okay? You don't have to follow the book as is, okay? At times the book will have things that are not under focus, okay? One subject advisor, for example, while we're in a meeting as history teachers, advised that we should not expect students to work on the textbook for the essay on their own. You know, there must be a kind of sifting. Another advice I would give is to follow the memorandum. You know, pick up 1, 2, 3 memorandums whenever you are checking whether your essay is in order. So if you take a memorandum and see where this question actually, moves, you will see that this question starts when both are suffering stroke, blah, 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 as we've done here. Honestly, let me promise that I have followed a guide that is a memorandum. So if you read in your book these areas, then you'll never be wrong. But check your violence, Yeah, books may not be tops at times. You find that the violence, maybe they are kind of confusing where they belong. It's not good to take all the violence that is found and discuss it separately, etc., etc. So you must follow the order that is there in the previous memorandum questions in this topic. They are there, there are many. Back to our heading, the release of Nelson Mandela and the resumption of talks. Okay, on the 11th of February 1990, Nelson Mandela was released, and talks were supposed to begin. But mounting violence disturbed the coming talks, and the talks that were supposed to be held on the 11th of April 1990 had to be postponed. The talks were postponed due to the fact that 8 protesters were killed in Sebokeng in a violence. In Sebokeng, 50,000 people, protesters, were protesting against local council rental increase. So people were boycotting because the rent by local councils had been increased. This resulted in the so-called Sebokeng massacre in Johannesburg. What actually saved the talks was the fact that there were secret meetings between Nelson Mandela and de Klerk over the fact that the process of negotiation must continue. They had their own secret meetings. Students normally confuse the two, the secret meetings and the formal meetings. And I would like you guys to separate between the two. When we say that there were secret meetings, we mean one-on-one, 2 people meeting. That's what we mean there, all right? As there are formal meetings which were always getting disturbed by violence, they had their own secret meetings separately, alone, Mandela and de Klerk only, where they were negotiating that, I know that my people are not right and your people are not right, but the two of us, let us agree to move on. The first formal meeting between the NP, National Party, and the ANC were the talks that were held at Grooteskill on 2 May 1990. 2nd May 1990, the first formal meeting was held between the NP delegation and the ANC delegation. The meeting at Grooteskill is also referred to as the Grooteskill Minute. Grooteskill Minute. Okay. This was, let me emphasize, this was the first formal meeting by high-ranking officials or officers of the NP and the ANC. This was the very first meeting, the Grooteskill meeting. And please have your meetings in an orderly manner, students. You know, in history, there's what is called chronology. So you cannot have the last being the first, etc., etc. You can't divide the thing. Ne? The first is the first, second, etc., etc. So this is your very first formal meeting, other than the secret meetings. The ANC delegation was led by none other than our dead Tata Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela. Okay, he was the leader of that ANC delegation, and amongst the delegation were people like Walter Sisulu, Alfred Nzo, Joe Slovo, and Thabo Mbeki. And the NP delegation was led by our honorable father as well, Tata de Klerk. Alright, and amongst the delegation, other people that were there were people like Pete Botha, Gerrit Viljoen, Kobi Coetzee, and Adrian Flock. Those are the guys that were going together with de Klerk. Let me emphasize again that in this essay, there's nothing important other than you guys saying there was this kind of meeting, mentioning the name of the meeting, which is in this case Grooteskill meeting. And when was the meeting? Your dates are important here. 2nd May 1990. And who were represented in that meeting? The NP led by de Klerk, accompanied by the following, and the ANC delegation led by Nelson Mandela and the other people in that delegation. So those details are very, very important. And of course, don't forget your outcomes of the meetings. So it's very, very important in this kind of essay that you tell us that information. What was the meeting? Where was the meeting? When was the meeting? Who were in the meeting? And what outcomes? An easy way to always remember or make sure that you have said all the required content when you talk about these meetings is something I actually advise, but it's not a historical issue. It's not an historical approach, but I thought it will assist students to remember everything that they must say. For example, I normally, integrate and make it more like Maths Lit or whatever. Alright, it's a 4W plus outcomes. I say, whenever you are working on a meeting, it's an issue of a 4Ws plus outcomes. What are these 4Ws referring to? What meeting? Okay, whenever you're going to discuss, know your what. What meeting am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about the Grooteskill meeting. That's the answer to the what. Where was the meeting? The meeting was at Grooteskill. And when was the meeting? The meeting was on the 2nd of May, 1990. And who were there? The issue of the delegates. And then plus outcomes. So I found this one of the easier ways to help students to not to forget critical information. 4Ws approach plus outcomes. It's a 4W plus outcome approach. But it's not really historical, but most we do integration, so it's my way of making sure that people remember. And that was the Grooteskill Minute. The results of the meeting we actually call the Grooteskill Minute. On 5 May, in a press conference, both F.W. de Klerk and Nelson Mandela announced that broad agreements had been reached at Grooteskill. The meeting lasted for 4 hours, and both groups committed themselves to end violence and work towards a process of negotiation.